Sexual assault against people in context of overall domestic or international violence has woefully been a part of human history since times immemorial. In the Iliad, the character Nestor calls his brothers in arms to lay down alongside a wife of some Trojan, once victory has been secured for the Greeks. Mass rape has also been documented in the Bible, in Anglo-Saxon, Viking and Chinese chronicles, and in medieval accounts. In this class, we will deal with the issue of sexual violence, which is currently punished in international criminal law. In the first part of this lesson, we will revisit some basic notions of international criminal law. In the second part, we shall see how sexual violence has been ascribed under those basic concepts. In the last part, we will mention some current developments in the political front for banishing sexual violence in armed conflicts. Criminal law is the branch of the law dealing with the punishments, from physical to economic ones, that a given community has decided to inflict upon those who have committed certain acts which are deleterious to certain valuable interests, such as life, liberty, or property. International criminal law is criminal law as applied to the international community of states, whereby certain egregious acts are deemed crimes directly punishable under international law, as they affect such community as a whole. The Rome Statute of 1998, which created the International Criminal Court, has competence to try the following crimes. Genocide, which is defined as acts committed with the intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group as such. These acts include the killing of members of a group, seriously harming them, inflicting conditions to bring about its physical destruction, preventing births within it, or forcibly transferring children from it to another group. Crimes against humanity, which are defined as crimes including murder, extermination, imprisonment, enslavement, torture, rape, persecution, enforced disappearance, and the crime of apartheid, committed as part of a widespread or systematic attack against any civilian population with knowledge of such attack. War crimes, that is, grave breaches and serious violations of the Geneva Conventions of 1949 and customary international humanitarian law, perpetrated during international as well as during non-international armed conflicts. Finally, the crime of aggression, which amounts to the planning, preparation, initiation, or execution by a person able to direct the military or political action of a state of an act of aggression against another state that constitutes a manifest violation of the UN Charter. Being rape one of the oldest practices carried out by victorious forces in times of war, we will first refer to sexual violence as a war crime. In the social sciences, there are 4 different approaches to account for the use of sexual violence in times of armed conflict. First, the feminist theory, depicting rape as a tool to further male domination over women. Secondly, the cultural theory, blaming specific traits of a given culture for the phenomenon. Thirdly, the strategic theory, identifying rape as a method of psychological warfare to intimidate the enemy population. And fourth, the biosocial theory, simply explaining rape as a discharge of a soldier's sexual desire. As for international law, both in the Nuremberg and Tokyo trials conducted in the aftermath of World War II, sexual violence was not expressly prosecuted in and of itself as a war crime. To be sure, rape was immediately forbidden under Article 27 of the Fourth Geneva Convention of 1949, but it did not amount to a war crime therein. In more recent decades, there have been allegedly between 20,000 and 60,000 acts of rape committed in the former Yugoslavia conflict between 1992 and 1995, between 250,000 and 500,000 acts of rape committed during the Rwandan genocide in 1994, 60,000 in Sierra Leone, 40,000 in Liberia, and 200,000 in the Democratic Republic of the Congo since the 1990s. These recent developments provoked a change of mind. More specifically, the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia ruled for the first time in international law that rape was considered a war crime in the Kunarak case in 2001. Currently, Article 8 of the Rome Statute describes rape as a war crime both in international and in non-international armed conflicts. Other acts of sexual violence are also considered war crimes in such conflicts, including sexual slavery, enforced prostitution, forced pregnancy, and enforced sterilization. The first time sexual violence was deemed to amount to an act of genocide was in the ruling issued by the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda on the case Akayesu in 1998. In that judgment, the tribunal defined sexual violence as any act of sexual nature which is committed on a person under circumstances which are coercive. Rape would be a specific kind of sexual violence, whereby there exists a physical invasion of a sexual nature. Other kinds of sexual violence need not necessarily be physical as long as they remain coercive, such as forced public nudity. Concerning genocide, the tribunal ruled that rape may amount to the genocidal conduct of preventing births within a group if the victim refuses to procreate as a result of the assault, or if the newborn child is not to be considered as part of the mother's group due to his or her origin. The tribunal also considered that rape amounts to the genocidal conduct of inflicting serious bodily and mental harm on the victim. The necessary genocidal intent must, of course, also concur. The International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda ruled in the aforementioned Akayesu case that sexual violence also amounts to a crime against humanity, provided it is committed knowingly as part of a widespread or systematic attack against any civilian population. The tribunal even declared that rape could be tantamount to torture. On its part, the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia also deemed rape as a crime against humanity in the aforementioned Kunarak case. The same tribunal further defined the crime against humanity of rape as coercive sexual penetration in the Furunziya case in 1998. As of today, Article 7 of the Rome Statute includes the following conducts as crimes against humanity: rape, sexual slavery, enforced prostitution, forced pregnancy, enforced sterilization, and other equally severe forms of sexual violence. The UN Security Council has been actively seized on the issue of sexual violence, at least since it issued its Resolution 1325 of 2000 banning rape in times of war. One of its latest calls has been for women to participate in the monitoring and prevention of sexual violence in times of armed conflict. Furthermore, in 2007, several UN agencies were united under the umbrella of UN Action Against Sexual Violence in Conflict, which has promoted, among other global initiatives, the Stop Rape Now campaign. On its part, the UN Secretary-General put on the spotlight several situations of ongoing sexual violence in his 2012 report, including those of Chad, the Central African Republic, Nepal, Sri Lanka, East Timor, Liberia, Sierra Leone, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Egypt, Guinea, Kenya, and Syria. Thank you for watching this lesson. Please visit mookchile.com, and as usual, we invite you to watch our next class.